All right, now we're going to discuss the classes of real estate. So there's three official classes, A, B, and C. There's really no definitive definition of these classes. It is subjective. Class A, you may think, is better than Class B, which is better than Class C. Depends what your definition of better is. I'm not going to get into a philosophical debate about that, at least not right now. We'll talk about that later on. But when we're talking about better in the senses of Class A, B, and C, we're talking about primarily location and condition. So Class A is typically going to be in the best locations. Class C is going to be in the worst locations. Class A is typically going to be newer builds with high quality materials. Class C is typically going to be lesser quality construction, maybe by virtue of age. So 100 years ago, they didn't have the same materials and technology that we do now, and it might have been the best materials at the time, but they're considered inferior now. And the fact that they're 100 years old would put them in the Class C category. Class B is a bit more middle of the road, so it's not in the best locations. It's also not in the worst locations. It's considered really in between A and C. So as I said, there's no official determination of this. So why do we even have classes? It's really used as a bit of a shorthand in the industry to describe from the outset what you can expect when you start looking into a property. So for instance, I typically do not chase Class A properties because the returns just aren't what I'm looking for personally in an investment, but they may be for someone else. So for me, when I see an ad and in the title it might say Class A commercial office building, I will really not even open the ad because I'm not really interested in Class A. It's probably going to be not a return I desire. So who determines the classes then if they are subjective? It really comes down to the brokers or the owners themselves if they're advertising their properties. But there's really no determination. You might see some people puffing their property, which is really a Class B, and calling it a Class A. Again, there's really no accountability for that, but if you're kind of jumping two rungs, say a Class C, and you're calling it Class A, then there's usually some sort of problem there. But we try and use it as a bit of a shorthand to give people an idea of what they can expect looking in further into the property, the investment. A couple of other designations I want to go through. These are considered unofficial. So A, B, and C is pretty industry standard, but there's only three designations. So a lot of people will use pluses and minuses, just like you would in school grades. So there might be A plus, which would be the cream of the crop. You might have A minus, which is, still in the A class, but definitely on the lower side of the A grouping. It's a good designation to talk about what properties you may be after. So for instance, an investor may be looking at A minus / B plus. So what that really means is, hey, we're looking at the higher end of the B properties and the lower end of the Class A property. So that gives you a bit more information than either saying, hey, I'm looking for Class A or I'm looking for Class B. It's a bit of an in-between. We may also have Class D, I've heard. That's really the bottom of the Class C grouping. It's really to designate the worst properties in the worst areas and conditions. On the other end of the spectrum, you might have trophy buildings. You may have heard of that term. That is really almost exclusively new builds, and why they call them trophy buildings is because they're the highest end, they're going to demand the most rent, they're in the very most desirable areas, and they're going to go for a premium in the marketplace. So those are the three classes. We don't really use them too much in this course, but it is a bit of a shorthand that can be useful. So Class A, Class B, Class C. We sometimes use the pluses and minuses, and then Class D and trophy buildings as unofficial terms.